Ego Pit History Guys, YouTube and Facebook. And there you go. Let's see. It should be showing. Just for, like I said, it's just I'm having fun with this old laptop. It's sharing it. It's just.
It shows its age.
Okay, let me try this the opposite way. Let me put the PowerPoint on this one and the StreamYard on that and see if that.
This is the perfect follow-on to the obsolete aircraft.
Yeah, exactly.
You are the crack pilot in a very obsolescent system over here, but I'm sure you will do great things with it.
Mm-hmm. So let's. Why is it? Should be able to view reverse. Showed it pretty.
Yeah, we know the mouse worked yesterday from the World War II Polish launcher.
Oh no, the mouse is fine. It's the It's trying to get the PowerPoint to show.
Turn around at full screen?
Yeah, it did. And then when I go to slide show from beginning, hopefully that it then shows on this one. And normally I can it's showing the slideshow now here, not there, because I need one screen, usually this one, to run StreamYard and the other one to show you guys the pretty stuff. And usually it lets you reverse it. Usually there's a tab that lets you reverse which screen is.
If you use presenter mode or use presenter view, will that do it?
It's not seeming to. Yeah, but it's.
Yeah, because if you're seeing it on your end.
It's I'm looking at it on my.
Full screen, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean it is whole screen. That's not the issue. It's. Yeah, no, it's.
This one is the one showing
Right.
stuff.
And normally when you do it, you can reverse which screen is showing, and I'm not seeing that button, and I can. So. Yeah, there's got to be.
Switch windows?
Yeah, where's switch windows? There we go. Let's see if it.
No, that's just.
No, it's just,
different,
yeah.
file.
Yep. That's if you got multiples. Yep.
We go to the desktop
Okay.
and try to change which monitor is 1 and 2.
That's true. So let's do that. And sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
What if I can just reverse and apply?
Yeah.
Hopefully your recommendation works. Let's see. No, it's still.
It's where the laptop sees both of those.
Okay, well, we should. Okay, let's just get this going and don't want to waste your guys' time. Okay, well, there's. I hate to say if we. I want to go. I mean, it's not big. It's smaller, but. Give the thing at very least, we'll just maybe we'll just do that. Just I just
Mhm.
want to make sure it's readable, you know. Well, thank you guys again for coming. So what were we talking about today? So none of you have ever been around discussion, right, where everyone complains that we're all old and dying and historical gaming's going the way of the dodo bird or the Brewster buffalo, right? No one's anyone ever actually invented that discussion before, and it's like, yay, it's someone. I'm 57 and I'm one of the young pups. You're what, 43? Oh yeah, almost. So, should we quote Star Wars? You're our only hope. No pressure. Excellent. So by trade and by passion, my name is Paul. I'm a process engineer, and no matter what I've done, whether my 15 years in the Navy or my 20 years since then in manufacturing and quality management and process improvement, I'm all about benchmarking and studying what other people do. And actually, in Pittsburgh, I'm a member, of course, because our community, although tiny, likes to subdivide itself. So it's not enough to be a historical gamer. You have to have the historical miniature gamers and the historical miniature board gamers. And they all have their separate events. And a few of us are cross. And then, of course, they have the modelers. Even though HMGS models, very few of us cross between ITMS and HMGS. And it's just crazy. But anyway, my kids are grown now and launched, yay. So, and how much I love them, I've got more time to give back to the hobby. And so I'm actually starting, got permission already from the board, and as of next April, I'm going to be starting a monthly gaming club. Come on in, we just started. We started late, so if you want to be part of it and get the drawing for the $25 gift card, and thank you. Suffer through my presentation. Thank you. I'll be giving out the gift card at the end. I'm starting, I said, a game club aimed toward both youth and veterans, but anyone can be part of it. But the point is that at that game club, we'll make sure and have a multiplayer, just like a con walk-up demonstration game. We'll make sure we have a multiplayer game for people who have never gamed before. And I've run very simple games, things like Battle of Cry, Memoir, at our camps. And they're always taken very well. But of course, you do it once, and then if you like that, come again next year for 1 hour of teaser. So we're going to do this regularly. But my thought is, okay, if I'm going to do this seriously, let's get the hive mind and people who've done this. So I had met online already Jeff Russ, who's from East Central Ohio, really cool guy. His claim to fame, other than working with the Mid-Ohio Gamers out of Columbus, and I've attended a few of their things. It's only 3 hours away to Pittsburgh. He actually runs a Mad Anthony Wayne game at the local middle school, and does a lot of really creative stuff. Plays with his granddaughter. It's very about engaging. So like they play fairies and stuff with sort of a command and he has his granddaughter help invent the rules. So he's right where we need a person to be as far as them. The next two people that I plugged into, my youngest son has gotten me really into listening to podcasts. And at the end, I have the information on it. I got to hear, in short order, Dwayne and Barnaby, two middle guys, both getting interviewed for their respective youth-oriented gaming groups in Missouri and in Ontario. A little bias. Barnaby is actually Hamilton, and that's where I spent my honeymoon 31 years ago, so a little bias there. Jim Stanton, I'm sure you guys know, who are HMGS-wise, is on the board. Super nice guy, and also helps out some. It's very plugged in as a teacher with HMGS Next. Jen, Jared, who's in charge of HMGS Next Gen, co-founder also. And then Rod Kane, who's right down like a room or two away, running Triumph. And that's a picture of him actually when my older son, who's my fellow gamer in my family, went to NashCon a few months ago, and we got to play Triumph with him, and I got to kill my son's elephants. So always nice to even brag against your family. So that's the 6 people who I picked on. and they were nice enough. I listened to the podcast. I took prodigious notes. Then we had a few online meetings and had them review. It's like, what else would you want me to say? So 3 parts of how to get a youth gaming experience. It could be a game. It could be a gaming con together. Get them in the door, run a welcoming game, and keep them. Because, you don't want to just get them and have a great time and then not be able to get them back. Or get them and then have a disappointing experience. And then followed by that, some resources to help you implement this. And if you don't even take anything notes, if you want a thing, leave me, you can shoot me an email address at pithistoryguy@gmail.com, and I'll shoot you a copy of this presentation. I'll also be posting it on my Pit History Guy Facebook page. And the files, you can download it. So get youth in the door. And you'll notice that I have initials here. So I wanted to attribute the idea to, so like BO, it's Barnaby, and Dwayne as DF is Dwayne Fleck. So it truly was everyone's contribution, whether by direct or through their podcast. And so one thing that I thought was very creative, but I hadn't thought about before, I don't know why. Barnaby says, so when you're doing outreach, don't just outreach don't just go to the military museums or the military events. Go to other gaming kinds of things. Go to a con, set up a simple demo game at the SF, at the fantasy con, and you can certainly make it so you don't want to run like a Napoleonic strategic at a. And we'll talk about details about the kind of games that are generally been found popular to attract youth. 2, call events cons. Even if you're having one every month, one every couple months, and I will deflect to our youngest member here. If the experience we have and experience I have in my youth thing is that con is a very marketable term.
I would say there's a lot of flexibility you can use with it if you use the right.
Oh, okay. All right, I can see that. Thanks. It's just the convention director walks by every now and then, and what he does, he's always going to see somebody without a mask on. So go ahead, keep going. That's all right.
Okay, well, yeah. So that your experience is saying that it's not just for an annual thing. Use the word con resonates.
Yes.
Cool. YouTube channels and other social media, use whatever tools you have that, Facebook sadly is something for us old farts. But a lot of time, and Barnaby will say is you'll listen to his podcast and, especially we'll talk about safety and security. We don't want to have a thing where you have adult liability dealing with youth, but once you get the youth going, the youth can set up their own thing. And so you're doing your own Discord server, whatever, that we're not even part of. So the youth can use the current stuff and we just stay off of it. And that way they're communicating and we're not liable. And marketing a sense of belonging to youth and their parents. So talk about the fact that it's not just gaming for gaming's sake, of course, as we know from the reason that a lot of us, myself especially, play tabletop games is not just for the game. It's for the ability to make friends and then harass them when you get better die rolls than they do.
So what other social media have you seen be helpful in promoting it to the youth? Are you using TikTok? Are you using Twitter? How do you get people to start watching those social media channels?
So, a lot of it starts word of mouth, but they're going to be on Instagram. I'm 57. What are you and your friends using?
So I'll be honest, I don't come into contact with a lot of people anymore. But for me, I'm primarily on Instagram, and I kind of use Facebook just as like a secondary thing because that's what all my family's on.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of information from like YouTube, really, but not like solid information, but just in terms of what's going on with new games or new ideas for gaming, because that's a lot of what I do in my free time.
Yeah.
Like that.
And so a lot of them, even though a lot of the other people here are adults, older people, but a lot of them being teachers are, and you'll see I've got all their email addresses at the end. So So it's like if you don't have a youth to talk to the people who interact directly with youth on a daily basis, and they'll. But as we'll talk about later, the main thing, social media isn't the primary outreach tool. The primary outreach tools we're going to talk about is actually starting with a core group. And here, let's skip to the bottom, okay? And of course, we talk about sense of belonging, and the last sub bullet talking about the physical games. That it's like, okay, it's not about the game. You're not selling that a physical game is necessarily more realistic or better, whatever, than a digital game. It's about everything that comes with real friendships. That's the bottom. So back to your point, though, how do you do outreach? The best way to, and this is true of any kind of group, the best way to build a group is to start with a critical mass. And so with the teachers, of course, that starts, they've got a sort of a hostage group. A lot of them start with their, Dwayne started with his kids. As you'll listen to his podcast, he actually taught for years and would tell all these kids for 4 years, like, oh, I love gaming and this is great. And you should try historical miniature gaming. And he talked about it for 4 years until they got so sick of it, like, okay, we're graduating in 4 months. Put up or shut up. And that's what started Dwayne almost 20 years ago doing cons in a suburb of Kansas City was that. And so it's just blossomed from that. But exactly, same thing with Soldiers and Sailors. We've got summer camp. So we've got, might be 4, 6, 8. But exactly, you're not going to start a youth group by a virtual thing and hoping that one person stays when they're the only person that demographic. At Barnaby with Hamilton, at his interview, he talked about the fact that it started out with there were 2 of the game members' youth that started out doing it, but then they started inviting their friends, and then other friends, once they had a critical mass, they started outreach, and then other youth started finding them on social media as well as personal. So it really, it's like resumes, which is that everyone says you need a resume to get a job. But 80% of resumes are through networking. So you need the resume, but the resume isn't what gets you the job. It's the relationship. Yeah, same thing in gaming.
It's finding true believers, because once you find the true believers, they spread.
Exactly. So you just, but there are, whether it's like an after-school library group, it doesn't have to be a gamers group. But exactly, you need to find and then be able to have a good person, whether it's a youth or an adult, to sell it. And then as soon as possible, I would say, you want to get the youth to run their own as much as possible and get the adults out of being something the youth are attending and something that the youth feel ownership of. Of course, telling you thing, ownership makes you, whether it's owning a house, whether it's owning a club, makes you more dynamic, that you feel you got a stake in it. You're not just coming on Thursday. And if you don't come, too bad. Who cares? You know that if you don't come, that if you're the youth in charge, that your gaming isn't going to happen, or your friends are going to be like, why didn't Joey show up? This is Jim's group in Connecticut, his middle school group. Continuing, getting him in the door. Again, this is standard marketing. Have a familiar location, it's comfortable, and safe place for youth. We'll talk about in the safety part on the next slide. Low cost. One thing we are, of course, as we know just from going down to the dealer hall, we are not a cheap hobby if you do it right. But there's ways you can make it cheap. And I'm old school enough that even though I'm spending a fair amount of money now, I started this hobby, like a lot of people of my generation, buying my first 49-cent box of Airfix Soldiers in the 70s. And so it was a very affordable hobby. And you had the free cheap rules, and was it incredibly accurate? No, but my first set of rules was Tractic, so I sort of went off the diving board. Exactly, where I'm going off of tank penetration charts made off the Aberdeen Proving Ground tests. But that was my starter set. But everyone has their own thing. But regardless, you don't want to make this something where only the rich kids can do it. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Whether it's having the club have supplies that you share, whether it's you just intentionally pick inexpensive Same thing, talking about not just having a simple game, but making it short. So you have someone walk in, you want to have something that they can have a complete experience of that first time visit within a relatively moderate amount of time. Talk about youth gaming with, and sometimes you might have to have the youth just added on to an adult game, but as soon as possible, it's from general experience, you want to have the youth be of critical mass that they're doing their own thing, and they're owning, and the youth and the adults are sort of just acting as support. Of course, the thing is that there's all the things that we know that gaming isn't about gaming. That depending on who you're talking to, like how many of you of these things with gaming, historical research, the hobbying start, and the social interaction? How many of you your favorite thing is actually playing the game? None of them. Wow, that's impressive. That's cool. Okay, how many of you just like going down the rabbit hole in the research? Yeah.
I admit to that.
Yeah, completely. And that sustained me while my kids were growing because my 2 younger kids didn't enjoy historical gaming. So, hobby, how much you like doing the building and the painting, and and the social interaction, making friends. Yeah, completely. So yeah. So it's exactly. So that's one of the things we've got to be able to communicate to people is that if people, any kind of people, but certainly and especially youth, since historical gaming doesn't have a big brand. So if someone's seeing a flyer or something on the first time and it says gaming, they're thinking, oh, well, I'm not into gaming so much per se, so that's not going to interest me. But you have to be able to have that interaction event, exactly, whether it's people visiting the museum, whether it's people you're doing something in a library or something else, where you can show the full spectrum of what it's all about. That even if you don't like gaming, and again, it's not that we hate rolling dice, but pretty much we had one person who said the game itself was the most important thing to them. Out of 15 people almost? Wow. That's, so that's the sales point right there. It's a picture at Recruits that that was built out of, again, a classroom game that now the students actually have run their own club, and then they have used to be twice, now once a year con that still includes a fair number of youth, including, as he says, alumni students who come back to visit. Running a welcoming game. This mostly is thankful, although a lot of us know this. A lot of this goes back to, thankfully, to Rod down the hall here, who's from Michigan. And as we know this, just like con games, standard rules. Same applies to youth games. Make it quick, short rules, even if you got to chop down the rules to something. Don't make it long to discuss the rules. And then don't make long, but make a game that you're not sitting around for half an hour waiting for everyone else to make their moves. So fast in and frequent play, touch time, and very interaction, not 8 people against each other, but like 2 sides. So people are creating friendships. That's why I like doing the commanded colors, or I've actually created a similar with hold the line, which also is very similar to commanded colors, where you're doing 4 against 4. And it's very easy for one person to run that, and you've got 8 kids engaged, and they're interacting. Kids who've never met each other are making friends by plotting. Again, avoid 2-player games, because again, if at the start you're going to be an adult is going to be running a game for youth, and so you can't afford to have all these youth coming up and then having one adult for every 2 youth that come up. Plus, again, even if it's 2-player games, that 2-player game isn't going to be what you want to be doing. Is creating an atmosphere where the youth are making friends with each other, and a 2-player game isn't going to do that. They're good because they're going to be thinking and plotting with each other, as opposed to if you have multiplayer games and they're going to be forming immediate relationships to win the game. Okay, and then there's that balance. You shouldn't make it so stupid that the kids feel like you're dumbing it down for them, or that you're starting them off with advanced squad leader. A game. It's important that visual spectacle is nice. You go off. And Historicon's the best of this. I was telling another guy and I, who were both members of International Plastic Modeling Society, stuff we have is as good as a lot of the IPMF stuff, and the figures a lot of times are better than the stuff that they're putting with their vehicles. So we can, it's easy enough to do ooh-ah for what we do. So we're there. I'm not. You guys are a lot better than me, as you'll see in a minute. And then, of course, you don't want to bring your fragile $500 miniature because, and as even with adults, I'm the klutziest person in my family, not my kids. Stuff's going to get broken. Fine. Just, it's a game. Don't bring stuff that you're worried about getting broken. Don't worry stuff, and don't have someone running a game master who's going to get wound up if it does, because it's about the game. It's about the players. Stellacon. There's Rod's Con. Kids playing Egypt, I believe.
Trojan horse.
Oh, Trojan, you're right. Oh, you're right, Trojan. I'm sorry.
The horse gave it away.
Yeah, I did. Sorry. That's what I know my slides better. Thanks for the. But again, some great, and the kids you don't see again the adults in the middle of this. That these aren't staged photos. These are from the cons. Retaining youth. So we talked about. Oh, so do we talk? So regularly skilled. We talked about this. So one thing that is that all these people have said experienced is a lot of youth are attracted to something where you're the guy in the action. So something on a very tactical level, squad level, small level. And that's a nice bridge from role-playing games, where the youth envision they're the person doing the action, not necessarily that's what you want to start out with. Not something where you're Napoleon and you've got 10,000 people, but something that's and so those are the kinds of games that are. Although still the commands and colors work very well, but that's again, I think it's small numbers of figures. So even though it's not necessarily squad or individual, it feels that way because of the small numbers of stands. Don't hover over the kids again. Once you teach them basic rules, don't intervene every time that you're correct the rules. If little bits is fine, help, but it's more important they have a good experience than that they play the game exactly right. Just like we do. We screw up. I mean, how many of us, played ASL or something or Tactics and got it right the first time? But it didn't matter because, as we said, it was the experience that mattered. And we talked about offer more than just gaming. We talked about the things that are not gaming and make sure that's clear. Tournaments. And one thing that Dwayne's group does that they've really enjoyed is actually doing some fundraisers that the youth then deliver games just like we've got Toys for Tots, and the youth actually go and deliver games to children's charities like hospitals. So they're not only collecting things, but then they're feeling ownership of that donation. Go ahead.
Forgot snacks.
Oh, yes.
They tell kids not whether you win or lose is what you get for snacking.
Oh, in fact of that, thank you for mentioning that because I brought Reese's.
There you go. See? All right.
Thank you. And I entirely forgot that I brought them for you guys. So, and yes, I coached rec soccer for 14 years.
You know your audience. Me too. Me too. Yeah.
And I had a coach of 8 and 9-year-old soccer players who said, these kids are too old for snack. I'm like, no, I'm not too old for a snack. You're an idiot. Okay, governance. So we talked about the fun stuff. Now the serious stuff. I mean, we like to, we know that there's both creepers and there's just liability. You don't want to just avoid problematic adults in your groups, but you want to avoid the appearance of it. You want the kids and you want their parents to feel like you've got a safe space. So again, another thing they mentioned in the interview with Barnaby, of course, is that the American tradition of gaming is what? In the basement. Not a good place for youth. Even if all the guys are fine, you've got your clearances. Like, how many? If you were 13 years old, how would you like to go into with the basement with 8 strange guys 3 times your age?
Police station, though, is an exception.
I go to a church group and they had something that took place in somebody's basement and I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, churches never have any problem with sexual abuse, right?
I mean,
I'm a preacher's kid, so yes, we have plenty of problems.
Maybe the rules for them are a little bit more flexible. I don't know.
One of my friends is actually testifying against her church leader from decades ago in Missouri this week. So yeah, may require background checks. Now, we actually got into this. I'm friends with Kristen Schuley and the others. We were talking about like, okay, why does HMGS not need it in Pennsylvania and we do? And basically the way the state law, and again, you've got to know your state laws. In case you're Pennsylvanian, and I am, HMGS is not a regularly scheduled event. So we get away from having that. However, my monthly club is going to be a regularly scheduled event. So I'm going to have background checks, which is fine for my adults who are game masters. And we'll have them all posted. And anyways, same way, it's not necessarily formal, but you want to make sure you have a policy on posting youth photos. Just not necessarily, even if it's not a legal thing, from a comfort thing. What I do with my youth games at Soul and Sailors is I take pictures of the games, and I have to make them feel owned. I have the kids put their hands in, and then and so all my games that I take with the kids, their hands are in the picture, not their faces. So they enjoy the cuteness of it, and they were there, but it's safe and you don't have to worry about getting releases from their parents. Sometimes it's also helpful in just going to a blank space. Go to a space, hold your club in a place that already has administrative structure and staffing, like library, school stuff. That way you don't have to worry about that kind of thing, janitorial services, blah, 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 blah. Churches, fundraising. A lot of people, like Dwayne, relies on fundraising rather than the kids paying fees. They're still doing the work for it, but another way of evening out so it's not something for the wealthier kids. And then the fees go into buying club supplies. They even go to pay them to go to like inexpensive cons and to buy the other things. Leadership development. Another thing, this is personally on my heart. I'm a long time thing. Another good way to sell this to youth and their parents, is that running a game and running a game con, the youth are doing it. This is a great way for the youth to take leadership and to have this experience of project management that can then go on their resume for college. And being able to communicate your ideas and being able to organize and being able to develop future leaders is a skill that there isn't enough of. So I'm certainly going to be using this in my Pittsburgh club. Go ahead.
This is a personal example. My son, I always would put on games at the house for him and his friends and things like that. And it got to a point where my son said, Dad, we love gaming with you, but if you're at the table, they all look to you.
Oh.
If you're not at the table, they all look to me. Which is when you, as a dad, that's incredible, makes you incredibly proud. But that's exactly it.
Oh, that's an excellent social psych point. And I'm a big social psych fan. Yeah, exactly. Because people don't realize that even if they're you're the nicest, soft, it doesn't matter your personality. It's like if the president of a company is in a brainstorm group, and they're not an ass, and they're trying to be really nice, just because they're there, even just suggesting it stuff, it completely skews. You want that president out of that brainstorming meeting because everyone's going to say, "Oh, the important guy said something." That must be so. Exactly. That's an awesome point. I really appreciate this because that is exactly.
One of the things that happened when I grew up, there was an adult around when we were outside playing games.
Yeah.
There wasn't an adult anywhere to be found. And now that's all you have. Kids don't play games where it's just the kids. There's always an adult directing the activity. So, getting the youth to be the GMs and set up the games, that's the way it should be.
And we've got to recreate that. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, no, completely. And because that space is destroyed, exactly. We're fighting uphill, but it's worth the fight for certainly. It's worth it for our hobby. It's worth it for the youth.
Yeah.
A good example is my son. He now does exactly that at conventions at Adepticon and Novag and everything. He's a podcasting site which he makes money on. A gaming podcasting site that makes money. It is possible. But yeah, he went from being a little kid playing and I told him what to do to him running his local group to now running content. It's a good progression. They learn.
One of the other things that happens out of that, let's say you're playing baseball and there's an argument about whether the kid was safe or out. You have two choices. Everybody goes home, or you figure out a way to resolve the problem. And
Exactly.
Same thing that happens here. I don't know if
Yep.
I'm allowed to do this. Or you shouldn't have done that. So you sit down and you decide how you want to attack that problem.
And you'll find people who are rules Nazis and they'll try to, but exactly, you learn, it's like, okay, that person, the rest of us are here to have a good time and
there's conflict resolution that has to go on that isn't violent.
we can teach them that, exactly. And I do, that's part of my background in project management and prosperity. I do teach that and that's with the youth development, exactly. So and if you ever need any more resources, by the way, too, feel free to connect me again. I can throw you a bunch on conflict resolution skills and different stuff. Okay. We're talking about
The kids growing up to run things.
mhm.
That's what you're talking about.
So, and then of course, with part of leadership development, of course, is just watching the kids. And certainly you want to give all the kids a chance to run things stuff, but it will show up like who's you'll just watch them back and watch who's taking the leadership role, and then help them out, and then they help the next person out. So you don't have to random. It'll just be observant, exactly. And of course, there's different adults are good at different age people. Some people are great with teen names that sucked with grade school kids. And when I coached soccer for the coaching clinics in Western Pennsylvania aren't about coaching, aren't about soccer learning. You learn about soccer through refereeing training. But when you go to the coach training, it's basically you learn about, if I'm coaching grade school, here's how grade school kids act and here's how to coach them. If I'm teaching middle school kids, high school kids, that's what you do. So we're getting to the end of here. I'm almost done. So I've shown you a lot of pretty stuff and you've seen a lot of beautiful stuff, this weekend. This is the game that I ran in August. Ugliest thing you never won. I didn't have much time to do it, but I took some tiles from Battle Cry and some from and some from Hold the Line and the miniatures from Battle Cry. And I wanted to run Gettysburg, and there was no 8-person version of Hold the Line, so I figured one out. There wasn't a version of 8-person Gettysburg that I liked online, so I took the old 125th anniversary Avalon Hill board game, and then ran the numbers and sort of shrank it down into by manpower and experience into an equivalent number of small units. And is it pretty? No, but it fit the time I had to do. And the kids who are 4th, 5th, 8th grade had a great time. If they saw your guys' stuff here, they'd think, "Oh my God, this is crap." What is it? But they'd see nothing. So the important thing, is don't say, "Well, I don't have time to do this grand thing. So if I can't do a grand thing, I'm not going to do anything." And the kids are just incredibly, and my experience is the youth and their parents are incredibly appreciative, and don't ever feel that you're not good enough, because again, you're giving an experience. Go ahead.
A kid came to a game store I was playing at, and he brings it an army, and he's so proud. Only like 2 or 3 figures were painted,
Mm-hmm.
and people were making fun of him, And I said, "Look, he brought figures." And I said, "You're now the Silver Army." He liked that. It's not, I'm the Silver Army, and the painted guys are the leaders, and everybody else is just silver.
Yeah,
And so, just anything to encourage him,
completely.
There's no such thing as a bad paint job for a kid. Yeah. For us, yeah.
So we've gone through all the steps through the, attract them, run a welcoming game, and keep them. So these are just a few things. I'm probably preaching to quite a lot of this here. I didn't know some of this stuff until past couple of years. I did, of course, Next Gen Wargaming that's got the website and they're running stuff. A lot of good stuff going on there. You can reach out to Jared and his team. There's a nice Georgetown University Wargaming Society does a lot of nice YouTube game videos that of all levels, from like running games to designing games to like of course where they are in DC to like military intelligence stuff. All so really there's a lot, but I'm particularly biased toward GUWS. As some of you may know, I didn't know until a couple of years ago. HMGS has a lot of figures and terrain and cash that are available for new clubs setting up, especially for youth clubs. And then you go to the website and it tells you, here's what you need for the grant. And from last time I talked to everybody, and you probably know better than I do, Frank, there isn't a lot of competition with it. I mean, they're literally.
Let's put it this way. I don't think anybody's ever been said no to. Okay, so
I would love that to be happening. I'd love to be so much demand that you had to compete.
The thing that is, I mean, it got started because there were teachers within HMGS who were members, and it was a natural fit. And then, it kind of expanded from there. The local libraries get into the thing. We're now doing things at the college level. So yeah, I mean, it's slowly growing, but it's not the pace of the growth is slowed, not because the resources aren't there, but as you say, it's more of a logistical drag. Not that anybody is saying you don't want to do that. Everybody's saying you do want to do that. You just got to find. When I just came back from Bennington, Vermont, and one of my cousins teaches up there. I mean, they've got their own battlefield. They teach the battle every year, and every time I go up there, it's like, we got this thing, and we send you a check if you just, you got to find the right person. You got to find the right history buff, or in effect, the HMGS member within that school that says, oh yeah, I've got all my old Avalon Hill stuff in the closet, and I've got I paint or I do this, I do that. Once you find that point of contact at that particular school, the guy who's going to, the guy or woman who's going to do stuff on a regular basis for you, then it's like, okay, check that locale, check that box.
So they have a geographic limit on the grants.
We sent money to Hong Kong.
Really?
The Chinese cracked down
Because we
on
got all
Hong
the
Kong.
other chapters.
Right.
Literally.
But no one's doing the power that we do.
We got pictures back from those kids.
Yeah, no.
So they got brushes. They got Jim's got a joust kit that he puts together, and he has faculty people come in. And if you look in the program, there is I think it might be 5:00 tomorrow, but check me on that. In the program under the event section, there is a listing for how to apply for the HMGS educational grant. And I think Jim is doing it. I'm not positive of the location. He'll be running 2 doors down in the Juniper room. He'll be running most of his home games for the rest of the weekend. So you can track him down. Jared's not here for this convention, but you can talk to Jim at any time. But like I said, he always puts time on the program for explaining the grant program.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thanks. I know we can run over, but I know everyone has plans to the rest of it, so I don't want to keep everyone from their next games. But so here's the 2 podcasts again that you can listen to. I highly recommend. They're both really entertaining and very informative. You can see all the stuff I got from just the podcast even before I talk to anybody. This is the other thing. As a sample, I highly recommend using Board Game Geek, and not just to buy and sell, and not just to inventory your games. Like all of mine are. My rules and my games are all there. But especially for the ratings. If you're building up a club and you want to be welcoming, intentionally stock things at a multitude of levels, so that don't again the running joke. You're not going to have a newbie come in and start them with Campaign for North Africa and measuring water for the Italian pasta. But even if they have seen the Big Bang Theory episode, but everyone will argue with like, well, I played this game and that game, and I think that rating should be a blah blah blah. But it's just as a tool, It's at 1-ish, 2-ish, 3-ish, 4-ish, 5-ish. You notice I've got the games on the right, board games and miniature games, so you can sort of align, and then also non-war games. So it's like, if you like playing Ticket to Ride, blah blah, try this. If you want to try military, if you like Agricola, here's something at an equivalent level. So, but again, highly recommend that. And again, same with board games are very easily items to translate into miniatures games very easily by turning hexes into a segmented ruler. Not necessarily that a 3-inch mark is a hex or something. That's what it was with the Gettysburg game, by the way. The Gettysburg game was basically hold the line, 13 by 9, except for much bigger with hex, but a hex was a 4-inch mark. And I just I used chopsticks and I put 4-inch markers with the marker on it. So they use chopsticks for movement and fire. And it just feels, as you know, for new miniatures, like, not that I don't love my board games, but a lot of times a miniatures game feels, because it's like, you don't have to worry about 60 degrees. You feel like you're more in control when you've got an open field than when you're constrained by hexes. Same way, Dwayne does Hobby Lounge, just painting. I'm planning on doing the same thing. I want to get IPMS involved ultimately in my Pittsburgh. All sorts of stuff. Next to the gaming, IPMS has, even if you don't join IPMS, highly recommend, they have a free 6-course class on adult basic modeling that's in Word. And you can download it without ever joining IPMS, and then you can take that course, and of course you can modify this in Word. You can modify it for whatever thing you want to build. You can teach people how to build to a standard class thing. It may not be how you do it, but it's because it's there. Why reinvent the wheel? We have people here. I didn't take my first painting class till 2 freaking years ago, but they said, when you do it, I don't, there's no copyright on it. Yeah, please, So I scanned it and I've posted it on and I attribute it, of course, to where it comes from. And there's lots of other great videos. Last slide is just the contact. Those are old people, including myself. More detail of where their background, where they're located, and their email address if you want to reach out to them. So that's it. The next step is yours in doing this. And the last thing I promise you, we are done before 2. And how many of us do we have? 10 to the raffle time. I think I've got 10 or less people, right?
Drum roll, please.
So being a geek, of course, and I don't have my dice with me. What do I have? I have my dice app. Yes, I do. Because I'm an engineer geek. RPG, simple dice. You can use whatever. And so we're gonna roll how about a D10? Does that work? And I got a 5. Who's got the number 5? Amen.
Or an S.
Yeah, exactly. So congratulations, Frank, and thanks for everyone for coming.
Thank you, Paul, really.
And happy gaming.
Any questions? Because anybody want to raise any issues for discussion? I mean, like I said, we sliding the schedule back because we have people who